When you're in a combat environment, nothing is safe and everything is perceived as a threat, and it has to be. So the difficult part is now going to a safe area, the United States, you're not in an environment where everything is a threat. Psychologically, physiologically, your nervous system is still turned on like that. And so that's where it's difficult for people to make that switch. And it does take time for everybody. That's just having to understand, your environment and understand, hey, I'm no longer in these situations. It's not any civilian's fault. I'm the one who has to make the change. I'm the one who has to understand that I'm now no longer in that environment. I need to change. My specialty was being an engineer, which had me basically dealing with explosives most of the time when we were deployed. I was, a specialist in explosives, so any type of entry that we needed to get into a place that was denied for whatever reason, be it a door or whatever, I was the guy who would place those charges to get us in those denied entry spots. Well, at first, I had no idea I was having brain issues. Again, I was an elite performer capable of making life and death decisions in life and death situations. And going from being an elite performer to one day I woke up after my last deployment, I was on 13 different medications. I was alcoholic. My wife was 9 months pregnant, and her request of me for the day was if I couldn't drink so much in case she went into labor, so she didn't have to drive herself to the hospital. I remember being in the hospital at my son's bedside, and it took the last Dilaudid that I ever took. I drank a airplane whiskey, and I said to myself, this is going to go one of two ways. I continue on this path, and it's going to kill me, and it's going to ruin my family. It's going to ruin everything I love. Or I can make the decision to quit blaming my circumstance and decide to act. And we're going to go out and we're going to find an answer. And we were able to. And once I did that, and I was able to help myself, I said, my God, how many people are in the same situation and they don't know what to do? You know what I mean? And I think back to what my family was put through and the solitary confinement sentence that just didn't have to be. And I don't want another son going into his father's bedroom to find his brain splattered all over the wall. That's enough. We can stop that, and we are stopping it.
Well, PTSD, I think that people who have had pure psychological trauma with no physical component, that's PTSD. But the minute you incorporate one form of another of a physical trauma, that physical trauma creates the same type of symptoms as PTSD does. What we've been seeing when we start comparing from Vietnam on up to what's going on in Afghanistan, Iraq, and wherever in the world is that we're wearing body armor, so it's protecting their body from the impact of trauma, but the head's still exposed. Let's do linear first, and linear is like being in a car accident at 10, 20 miles an hour. You're driving and you rear end someone or someone rear ends you. What happens is you have to remember that the brain's floating in water, cerebral spinal fluid, so it's floating. And this is the frontal lobe, this is the frontal lobe, and right under here the skull has a ridge. And so when it's thrown forward, the ridge hits this part of the brain, the frontal, and then it goes back and hits the back of the brain. So you get what they call coup, counter-coup injury, so you get the frontal and the occipital lobe. Occipital for vision, frontal lobe for sequential activities, for choosing the right things by being correct, socially correct, personally correct, environmentally correct, and mood, stability of mood. The pituitary is right here. It's that little bean-shaped thing. And the pituitary has, 9 hormones in it. And those 9 hormones go to different organs, different glands throughout the body to turn them on or to tell them to slow down. So this is all based upon what we call homeostasis, a balance. And as long as the receptor or the sensor is working and the pituitary is working and the glands on the periphery are working, we'll always have optimal amounts of hormones. You damage any one of them. You damage the peripheral organ, like someone who develops trauma to the testicle and loses a testicle, or has a cancer of the thyroid and loses the thyroid. you need to replace those hormones. And in blast trauma or head trauma or any kind of trauma whatsoever, you can lose the brain's homeostasis or regulatory mechanism, and you lose that hormone.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, ready. When Warrior Angels Foundation linked up with Dr. Gordon and Millennium Health Centers, they had been using Access Medical Labs for all their laboratory analysis and needs. And so it was a natural progression when we were setting up our logistics and administrative arm to use Access for our labs for our veterans. The thing about Access Medical Labs is this is the premier laboratory facility in the country, if not the world. And their technology is second to none. But the difference maker for us is Access gives us the ability to run a decentralized program where we can reach anybody wherever they're at, all right? Because we didn't have that capability. That's Access Medical Lab saying, hey, we have that capability, let's enforce this, and we can amplify this effect that you guys are looking to make. And so because they had essentially the concierge program where, say, right now we're in Jupiter, Florida, say we had a guy in Dallas, gets sent him in the butt, get there, he goes, we send a mobile phlebotomist to his house, or he can go to the lab that's closest to his geographical location and draw the blood. So the veteran, the service member, the person who's having a hard time, they never even have to leave their house. And again, we wanted to find a way to do that, but Access was the vehicle that allowed us to drive to that destination. So without them, there is no Warrior Angels Foundation.
With Andrew, he's in Dallas, so to go from Dallas straight here, get ran here, and then resulted out. So the integrity of the sample is kept here. It's not being, going from refrigerated sample, come here, it's ambient, then it gets refrigerated, then it gets frozen, then it's shipped somewhere else, and it gets thawed out. Everything is kept here. We are a core lab, and we're more premier. Well, my father's a biochemist and my mother's a microbiologist, and one day they just said, hey, let's start a lab. I mean, they've worked at some of the most premier hospitals in the Northeast. We're talking Mount Sinai, the VA Medical Center. So they have a lot of experience in the laboratory field and wanted to venture off. They just wanted to provide quality laboratory results in the community. We don't answer to investors, shareholders, private equity firms. We do whatever we want to do. We have ethics and we focus on the quality and doing what's right. And that's how we've been able to stick around here for over 13 years.
Yeah, so this is the mass spec, as they call it, mass spectrometry. The unique aspect of this is the precision in which it can measure. Like for instance, reverse T3 or vitamin D or these things that we want to look for, we put into this mechanism, and it's going to give us the ability to measure the mass to charge ratio of the ions, right? And that allows us to identify and quantify molecules within a specific compound, okay? And that's the precision aspect of it that separates this lab from so many others. And it's key component to Warrior Angels Foundation because we need the precision readings off these lab analyses in order to make the correct movements that the prospective patient is going to need, all right? So again, this is a tool that allows us to offer precision analysis.
So when we get the lab results in, we put them into a template report format, and based upon what the results are, we'll start a protocol, and that is a package of treatment. And once we have established a composite of anti-inflammatories, then we look at the hormonal aspect. And the hormones, based upon what they're deficient in, is what we'll replace them with. With the supplementation, it's strictly about taking care of the inflammation and the free radical damage. That can lower the brain's ability. With the testosterone, we try to give physiological dosing so that we don't shut off their own system. I think in the past 6 years we found through the VA that there was a generic disregard for the well-being of those people who put their lives out on the front line for us. And fortunately some headway has been made. Is it to the level that I'd like to see it? Of course not, because I'm sitting on a potential benefit to the veterans so they can get back into real life instead of this artificial, mystical world that's led by being on a handful of drugs, where they can get off the drugs and they can live a more productive life, enjoying life, laughing, being with the family, wanting to be with the family instead of in isolation, in the bathroom with the windows shut and the door locked and the lights off, just sitting there on the toilet, not doing anything, but just sitting there because you felt more safe. So 10 years from now, I'd like to say that there are facilities throughout the United States that are capable and able of delivering the protocols to not only to veterans, but to civilians, and have their quality of life go from no quality of life to having quality of life, whatever that is for the individual. That's the key.
These effects, the silent effects of war, have a damning effect on the family, on marriages, and everything else. And we can help to turn the course on that. And so every day that's a reminder to me to live through those experiences, to say this is what we're doing, this is what we're affecting, this is what we're saving, and that's a driving factor behind the Warrior Angels Foundation.